Committee, which is, well, I'll let her explain what that group is. That's part of her presentations. And then we also have John Zena. He is with the Office of Sustainability for Shelby County, and he's managing the HUD Sustainable Communities Greenprint Grant, and he'll be telling us all about that. So.
Okay, so I'm passing out a brochure that we have available to all of our steering committee partner organizations, and it's available on the web. If there's anyone out there who does a presentation similar to this on green infrastructure and would like to have these handouts. So it kind of goes over broadly what I'm going to present to you today, focusing on greenways initiatives in our region. This is a representative slide of all of the organizations in the steering committee. We are a voluntary and ad hoc group of stakeholders who are invested in smart and sustainable greenways development. And as you can see, we represent a variety of backgrounds, both in not-for-profit and for-profit businesses, public officials and design firms, and conservancies. And we began meeting as a group in 2009, May, after a ULI event called Exploring the Transformative Roles in Greenways. And then at the end of that event, many of these groups were involved, and they decided that greenways were agents of change that actually impact economic development, environmental revitalization, they induce healthy behaviors, and they help to connect our multi-state community. So we decided it was a great issue for us to kind of join up around and to explore as a group. And to narrow in on what we do, our mission is to unite our stakeholder voices and to strengthen their efforts to advance sustainable greenways development here in our region. And what I do specifically as their coordinator is to focus on the 2 C's, I like to call them, collaboration between our various partners that we have here, so that when we have new projects that come to the region, we're sharing resources, best practices, ways to get things done in our region. And then also on connectivity. So connectivity is really, really important to us in building a green infrastructure network, and that's what I'll explain more about today. And our vision is essentially what a green infrastructure network looks like for the Mid-South. It's an interconnected and sustainable system of greenways, blueways, parks, trails, bike lanes, working lands, wilderness areas, and open spaces that help to enhance quality of life here in our region. When we break down green infrastructure and all those words that I just threw at you, different entities there, we have 4 main categories, which are natural areas, so our waterways, our wetlands, our wildlife habitats, conservation lands like our parks and our greenways, our working lands like our farms, our timber forests, and open spaces, which can be wilderness or it can just be any open space that is supporting our ecological features. And the main thing that ties us all together is that through them all coming together, they help to create and to ensure our natural life support system that is important to us, and it should be just important, just as important as our gray infrastructure. That's why we categorize those 4 types of lands as green infrastructure, to associate them directly with our bridges and roads, our sewers, and our power grid. Those are all essential components of a successful community, and we want green infrastructure to be on that same level when you're thinking about an essential component to a successful community. So, breaking it down even further, a true green infrastructure network consists of a system of hubs, links, and sites. So hubs are large tracts of lands. They anchor a green infrastructure system, and they can be either private or public lands. Our links are our trails or greenways that connect our hubs. They help for transportation of humans and animals between our large tracts of land. And our sites are smaller, but they don't have to necessarily be connected to the system like our hubs are connected via links. But they still have important ecological value or social value that gets people excited about recreation or provides a specific habitat, possibly for an endangered species. So it's not just a system of greenways.
No, they keep it that way to make people feel guilty for coming in late.
So it's not just a system of greenways. Obviously, there's other components that are just as important. And today, I want to show you that we actually do have some components of that green infrastructure network present here in the Mid-South. I'm going to talk about Overton Park, and actually, this map is borrowed from the the Memphis Regional Development Center.
Design Center.
Design Center. MRD. I just always call it MRDC.
They know what MRDC
is. What it means. Okay, MRDC. And so first I'll talk about Overton Park. Then we'll talk about Shelby Farms Green Line and the connection between those two. The Wolf River Greenway, Riverwoods State Natural Area, the Johnson Creek Greenway in DeSoto County, the South Memphis Green Line, and then the Harriman Ridge Project. To start off, talk about Overton Park, I think of that as a hub because it is 184 acres in the center of a very urban area. It's essential for the essential habitat for several species, and it's also essential recreational point for the dense population that is located around the park. At least it's that. It's 184 acres, and 126 of those are actually protected by the state as old growth forests through the designation of a state natural area. And as you will probably know, the Overton Park Conservancy formed last year to oversee the maintenance and the enhancement of the park, and they have done a really great job in updating its trails and helping to further the integration of Overton Park as a linked-up hub in our system. A potential link that Overton Park and Livable Memphis specifically are exploring is known as the Overton Broad Connector. And that is actually, it's going to be revolutionary for our region because it's going to be our first protected cycle track. So a cycle track is, it's an on-road trail that is actually protected from vehicular traffic by some kind of barrier. So what's going to happen for the Overton Broad Connector is probably it's going to start off with bollards. I don't know if you guys know what they are, but they're like plastic poles that will provide a barrier for cars that will protect you from them when you're riding your bicycle. If they had unlimited funding, then they would have put in also a barrier like a streetscaping type barrier with trees and grass as well. That's also included in a cycle track. And this cycle track is really important because it's been sponsored by the Green Lane Project, and they identified 6 cities across the U.S. who are becoming very up and coming on their projects, their bicycling and walking pedestrian projects, and they have identified the Overton Broad Connector as one of those great up and coming cycle tracks that they're supporting. And that will connect us here from, let's see if that works, yeah, from Overton Park, and then we'll go 1.7 miles down Broad Avenue, down Tillman, and that'll connect up to the Shelby Farms Green Line. And that's a really important link for our region. It's 6 point...
You might want to mention the cycle track is actually a 2-way bike lane.
Okay.
That's what makes it the cycle track, that you've got to go both ways. So right now they're split on either side of the street in most locations. These will be shoved over to one side and it'll be wide enough for 2-way traffic.
Right. And it's protected.
It's safer. On our bicycle, cars that feel safer than taking track.
A lot of people, experience that. So that will be connected to the Shelby Farms Green Line, which I'm sure most of you know. It is 6.7 miles paved from Shelby Farms Park to Tillman Road, and it is a Rails to Trails project, and that's a really popular way to get trails and greenways across the nation because of the straight line of the railroad bed and the general ease of paving and negotiation that has to happen with landowners. And so that officially opened in October 2010, and it's been, as you know, probably extremely popular. Over a 2-day period in April of 2011, there were 173 bicyclists and 60 pedestrians who were spotted as using it. And I say it's revolutionary for our region because people initially were afraid of what the Green Line is going to bring. Is it going to have crime? Is it going to be usable? And a really great comment that came out of one of our public meetings about it was that people can't tell you what they want, but they know when they see it. And they love the Green Line, and it's been tremendously successful. So it's a crown jewel in our region.
What about the crime there? I mean, is there any validity to the concern about crime?
There haven't been any major crimes committed on the trail. I think that one of the first week it opened, there was a mugging that happened. A woman's purse was stolen. She was just walking in high heels down the Green Line, but it wasn't a typical user.
My boyfriend got hijacked.
recently, what was that, a month ago maybe?
Yeah, it was like right at the trailhead in Binghamton. He was coming from the skate park, which, you know, originally we had talked about doing connectivity down through to the skate park too.
It was also getting dark at the
It
time.
was getting dark, and, you know, that's a pretty rough neighborhood there in Binghamton. But, you know, it just improves as there's more people present on it. You know,
Right.
more people that are there, the less likely.
And Shelby Farms is knowledgeable. They are the ones who manage the trail. The trail is owned by Shelby County. They're knowledgeable of the concerns about security, and they have a whole new system of cameras that they've set up that are directly linked to the MPD station. And they, every time, this in particular, this connection here that they're trying to make in the Hughes Heights neighborhood of Madison and Larchmont is getting some particular pushback because of fear of crime. And so they've had the police sergeant from that area come out and speak to the public and talk about putting in the cameras with the live direct feed to the stations just down the street. So
You know, it actually creates a safe space for the neighborhood
Right.
too. That they got that, they know they can go hang out in that area, and nothing's going to happen to them in that area.
right. So this is, even though it's just a half-mile extension of the Green Line, it's actually, this has initially overcome some hurdles to implementation because of public perception. But really, it's just a few, they've done some polling in the actual neighborhood, and it's just a few kind of, what you might call them? I call them negative Nancy's.
Holdouts.
Holdouts, there you go, that cannot be convinced that this is an asset for NACO, but the vast majority of the neighborhood agrees that it is. And I'll show a little bit of public polling later on. But I want to talk about another connection because connections are important to the steering committee and then to our larger greenprint effort. And that is the 4.3 mile Cordova extension to the Green Line. Shelby County has been awarded a $3.3 million CMAQ, which is Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program. So that's a state grant that goes out to alleviating congestion and traffic along different areas to extend the Green Line from its current terminus right here at the edge of the Shelby Farms Park down Mullen Station and into Macon here into Cordova. It's the center of Cordova, the old town of Cordova. There's a depot there. Anybody know the area? Anybody knows the area? And there is a potential conflict with the crossing of Germantown Parkway, which they're working out currently in the design process. So we'll see what happens with that. Any top ties?
Is the track cross Germantown Parkway currently?
There is not a crossing right there. It's just it's
Just
at
right
grade,
there.
but there's no lights or anything like
Like a
that.
game
It's been
of rock.
removed.
They removed when they removed the track, they removed the arms, and you could barely notice it when you go over.
Right.
So it just goes straight across the street, not like going.
It was existed when Germantown Parkway was much narrower,
Yeah.
and so when they widened it, they
Oh
so
yeah.
you
I
can't
remember.
you can barely tell.
Yeah.
There's like a bump, but I mean, you can barely
Yeah.
tell. It's right.
Okay. Because like the Green Way, whatever it's called, it goes under Germantown Parkway. But
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Germantown Green Line. It
it
does.
wasn't a railroad track.
You're right. You're right about that. I don't know the history of the Germantown Greenway, if that bridge was already there, and that's probably why they chose to do that, because it runs along the Wolf River. So there probably was a bridge already going over the Wolf River, and so they just provided access underneath.
Yeah.
But I think tunneling under, that's my personal favorite for getting over Germantown Parkway.
Yeah, because then you can do cool graffiti on it.
No, because then animals can travel too. Because that's been actually shown to be effective, believe it or not, in other areas. Animals using tunnels.
As opposed to crosswalks.
Yeah, as opposed to crosswalks. Yeah. So another really important link for our region, especially for the city of Memphis right now, is the Wolf River Greenway, which when it's completed in 2020, that's the projection, it'll be 22-mile paved trail all the way from the Wolf River Harbor here on the Mississippi to the Germantown Green Line in Germantown. So it'll be directly connected, 22 miles. That project is being built by the city of Memphis, and then once the trail is completed, the Wolf River Conservancy helps to manage it. So similar model to the Green Line. The first link of the Wolf River Greenway opened in December of 2010, and that was 1.6 mile loop from A right here. This is Walnut Grove to this point B, which is about Shady Grove right here along Humphreys Boulevard. And then the second loop opened just this year in September from B to C here, and that's another 1 mile extension. And this loop extension was really important because it does connect directly up to the Germantown Greenway system. So I'll show you on the next map. Let's get that. On the next map here, you can see that we have right now, well, actually right now we would minus this. So we have 14.1 miles right now of continuous trail. Once the Germantown finishes their 14.4. Once Germantown finishes their section, it'll be 16.9 miles of continuous trail, all the way from Tillman down the Shelby Farms Green Line through Shelby Farms Park, across the bridge here. There we go. Across the bridge at the Lucius Birch Natural Area, and then down the Wolf River Greenway, and then connecting to the Germantown Greenway, all down here.
So where the greenway right now ends in some like random parking lot, does it actually go past that, or like is that supposed to connect to something at some point, or?
The Wolf River Greenway?
Yeah, like in Germantown, after you go under Germantown Parkway. What? Yeah, and that, like, if you take it all the way, I think it's the end, it like ends in a parking lot. That has a really cool winding thing right now.
In Germantown?
I guess it's Germantown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know what they're doing right now is they're constructing a road, the extension of the Wolf River Parkway. And then as they got the money to extend that road, they also were able to get the bridges needed to extend the Germantown Green Line from its point here, C, to its point down here, E. So that's that other 2.5 miles that's going to happen within the next year or so. That's going to be from C to E, right? Or D to E. D to E. So here's D right here. This little area right here you're talking about, the retention pond, that's where it is right there. This green area. Yeah.
Weird gold park.
And if you go this way, yeah, you run into a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's where you were talking. Because this is Germantown Parkway here.
Yeah.
And so as you cross over it, this is the end of their trail system right now. And so what's going to happen as they extend Wolf River Boulevard, it's going to build the greenway along the side of it, on the side of the river. And then that's going to be this 2.5 miles here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I live over there, so I'm right on it, like
very good.
once or twice a week.
And then another really important thing about this plan here was that once the trail is actually completed in Germantown, it's going to run very close to the Riverwoods State Natural Area, and that is it's considered a site in my model because it is not currently connected to our systems, and it's not large enough to be considered a HUD. It's only 21 acres, but it's managed by the City of Germantown and owned by actually the Tennessee Department of Environmental Conservation as a state natural area, so it's left in its pristine condition.
Are there plans like that would be another place to have like canoe launchings and access to launch the canoe and go down to the next grade along the river and tie them in?
That's a really good point. I don't know if there's one being actually formed as part of this greenway extension. I know there is one on the western side of Germantown Parkway. Right there, if you go into the parking lot of the Agri Center here, and you go down, like where the corn maze is, right? You go down this way, there is a put in here, and there's a takeout right here at that underpass or overpass.
What about for the west, where once again the trail really gets very close to the river? I mean, it just seems a natural launching
As they build it?
place.
You know, I am not sure about that. Do you have anything about that?
I haven't heard anything about it,
It's a good idea.
It would be appropriate, but
Right.
that's an expense to take on. It's like they shut down the boat launch at Kennedy Park,
Like what?
Do what?
What would be expense to take on? That would be.
You have to maintain one of those facilities, you end up having a washout every city right now is struggling to even maintain the launch that we have at the end of Mud Island. And when it shut down, we had a launch and pull out at Kennedy Park in Raleigh that they now have fenced off.
That was concrete, wasn't
And
it?
you can't get to it. It was concrete. So it washes out eventually, and you have to pour more concrete.
Well, it could be that the more of them, there could be more fees raised by launching in. If we had more, so they could take care of that.
More public support holding our elected officials feet to the fire about like the budget investments.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
he's telling me to write your elected.
If you go to the Wolf River Conservancy's
Yes,
website,
a grassroots support group could really kind of make it known.
yeah, I think that's a really good idea because as we talk about a green infrastructure network, we include that term blue
We're
way.
gonna have that to your job there.
It should already be my job because if you think about blue ways, in order to maximize the use of a blue way, you would want to have the public out on the river, and so that would be a portal and entrance to utilize that blue way. So yeah, I think that's a really legitimate point that you bring up.
Is there somewhere we can find maps of the plans for the greenway? The Germantown extension?
The Germantown one. I don't have a map of that on my website, but there are some maps of other projects. I haven't seen a map of that.
I mean, it will be a part of when we're doing the green print, the proposed.
Right.
Like right now, our map, there's a map online that you use with Google Earth. And we can go to that if you want to skip to it real quick, just to show it.
Sure.
If you go to the MRDC's website, mrdcinfo.org, on the main page, when you get to it, you come to this map, and it's got all of the existing, it doesn't have proposed on it, because we wanted it to be useful for people that were actually going on and using them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of controversy with showing people proposed, because sometimes that can make property values go up, and so there's a lot of privacy issues with that. So we'll get into that probably later, but we'll trying to deal with how to deal with that is interesting.
Like it led problems for the acquisition of certain properties right towards the end of the Wolf River Trail downtown. Like people got a notion of, we're gonna have a trail go through here. Land that was not being used for anything was really probably tax liability to those owners. Like some of them are now being sticky about negotiating easements process.
Like ones that are rails to trails, typically the rail is either owned by a municipality or a rail line, and it's not as big a deal to show that as proposed. But down in DeSoto County, they're doing a lot all over, and they're not really sharing anything with the public with their proposed on.
Okay, so there probably isn't a map yet that was proposed.
Just kind of
Not a public map, but I mean that information's out there.
Of the 2.5 miles, I'm sure there is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who has that. We have it. Is what I'm saying. We have it, but it's not
It's not on their
a
website.
public.
So like if you look at the trail going through North Memphis along the Wolf River, they can show you a general path because, it's following the Wolf River, but they still have to go pin down, exactly where that alignment will lie because you've got just a huge number of parcels owned by all kinds of families that had them back in the days when there was actually some kind of agricultural value to that land or whatnot. And, now you have to go find these people and you have to ascertain whether there's environmental liabilities present. And it's just hard to pin down until you're actually at that point.
So anyway, this map's got a lot of different information on it. And if you click on this, happens to be the Shelby Farms Green Line. And if you click on it, you get information that comes up about who manages it and how long it is. And
Go to Germantown.
which way?
Yeah, that way. You're right. Keep going east. Pretty sure it's on there. There, yeah, it's up there. There you go.
Where?
There's River Woods. Here's the state natural area again.
Okay.
And so along.
So is that a Wolf River Natural Area paved trail here?
That should be
So where is that retention line?
It would be here, right there. That's River Woods. So this is where the new one's going to go, projected through River Woods here, as this Wolf River Boulevard moves forward. Go up to the left just a little bit, right there.
And when was property originally owned by the Native Plant Society or something?
Some gardening.
They didn't want the road to go through there, and so we had to go change the law in Nashville to the road.
For this road?
Yes, it is.
I'm not sure.
The river was a natural area standing in the way of the Wolf River
Yeah.
Boulevard being expanded. Naomi Van Holt fought that very valiantly on the Sierra we have.
I know that with the construction of Wolf River Boulevard, they brought on the Audubon Society to actually do like an environmental
Now you gotta know that this is not
assessment.
the National Audubon Society environmental group, but nobody ever copyrighted the John James Audubon's name, and so the Audubon Society who's doing this certification, they're actually called Audubon International or something like that. And so it's a name, and it gives you the impression that it's Audubon Society doing it, but it's
It's a
not.
corporation. It's a corporation.
I think it's a not-for-profit corporation, but it has no relationship to the Bird and Wildlife Conservation Organization itself. That people think that, people who got some migratory bird treaty act and whatnot.
You hear
It's not that.
something different.
And I think they also certify live golf courses, which is an environmental in some ways, like. Unless it's all native grass, I don't know about it again.
About those people. Yeah.
Go back.
Sorry, I was just curious.
No, I think
that's my
that's-
favorite part of the trail.
Yeah.
It's like hilly and windy, and it's a lot of fun, and I love to see it longer. So
They have plans to extend it even further beyond that initial 2 miles too. I wish.
Hopefully eventually we can ride all the way to Moscow.
Well, I know that at our last steering committee meeting, Germantown was really interested in meeting with Collierville to talk about how we're going to create the junction there.
And then we can get a boat launch above the weirs that got installed, which is only white water that occurs on the Wolf.
Yeah, there's actually a natural unpaved trail that runs along the Wolf on the other side of the Wolf.
That's the mouth of the wolf.
No, it's not the mouth of the Wolf. It's actually just above Collierville. The Corps of Engineers came out and installed a bunch of huge boulders to slow the river down to that point so we wouldn't keep having head cutting. As the river was channeled downstream, the water moves faster and it cuts away, undercuts the banks, and kept cutting further and further and further back into the river. So they put in erosion control devices, really, I guess they call them weirs. And so it actually creates a set of rapids there now, like where you could get into a kayak and go to whitewater in Collierville.
That's cool.
They're not.
Right now, there's no public
Yeah,
access.
that's what it is.
Well, yeah, because it's a very steep, at least when I was there, it was steep, there was no way to really get put in there. But I think there is a significant amount of like horseback riding and things like that that happen on the other side in Collierville, on a natural trail. And that was actually formed with the Corps of Engineers, I believe, helped to form that trail system at Collierville.
I got a bunch of logs that they had to dig out of the bottom of the river to make room for the boulders that date back to the last ice age. And my particular log got another log at that strata and dated back 15,000 years to when the glaciers had come down to the end. If you want a really expensive table made out of
So we were talking about a little bit about, I think Chooch was, about DeSoto County Greenways and how they have created this master plan, this green print already for their own region. And the really great and interesting thing about DeSoto County Greenways, this organization, is that they're couched underneath the Economic Development Council. So they automatically form all their decisions about the creation of more green space under the economic development, economic growth sector. So in people's minds, it's just easier, it makes them easier to accept money going towards this because they realize that it's an economic stimulator. So these are their goals for their DeSoto County Greenways. As you see, it's a holistic approach, and it gets into what I'll be talking about in just a minute about the benefits of our greenway system, like health, water quality, air quality, wildlife, and economics. And, oh yeah, Hernando Mayor, Chip Peterson? Johnson, dang, I'm gonna mix that up. Chip Johnson. He He's the mayor of Fernando, and he's really on board with this. And I've got a great quote from him that says, "The built environment dictates our culture of health." So he's really into getting a correct built environment for his town to dictate his town. And a crucial link for DeSoto County that they're working on right now is the Johnson Creek Greenway. They just recently paved 3 miles of it this summer between Baldwin Road and Highway 61 in Horn Lake. And another 5 miles of unpaved are actually, they're already saved, but they're not officially designated yet. And what's interesting about this is it runs along a utility easement, and so that's another, like a Rails to Trails, utilities is another way to kind of think of how we can create future greenways. What's the kind of easiest way, best practice to make this happen? I'll be quick. Okay, and then just really quickly, in South Memphis, there's another green line that is unique because it's actually come up from the community. So the WORKS CDC is a community development corporation that does work in the neighborhood here of South Memphis, I think is what they call it. Yeah. South Memphis, yeah. And they have, this will be a Rails to Trails program that happens 2.1 miles from Mallory to South Parkway. And it's an important link because we already have, as you should know, bike lanes along South Parkway. So it would help to increase connectivity between biking facilities and walking facilities. And last one is the Harahan Bridge project. It's going to be a 1 mile multi-use trail across the Mississippi River on the Harahan Bridge, right here. It'll go from the Riverwalk to East Broadway Avenue in West Memphis. And it was couched as part, of a larger $15 million grant application to the federal government Tiger Grant Program as part of this main-to-main multimodal corridor. So the Harahan Bridge is a 1 mile section that encompasses 1/10 of this 10-mile project. And that's actually underway, the funding is secured, and we should have it by, I think, 2014 is the projected time right now. Why is it go ahead. Really quickly.
Really slow on Twitter.
What happened to my Chelsea and Evergreen to Roosevelt Park trail?
I mean, I couldn't do them all. You want to keep going? There's lots of things that's really exciting about right now. There's a lot going on in this field. Are you great with this green line?
No. I mean, like, I've been not involved myself in all these things, but my shop actually sits on Chelsea, right at Kilowatt Lake, so I'm gonna have that trail in front of my shop, and I'm gonna have the Wolf River Trail behind my shop.
So there's also
new rental service there.
Also, like things going on in North Memphis as well, especially with the Chelsea and Chicago area, right?
Are you going to carve the canoes yourself?
Strippers.
You're going to have strippers carved?
No. You glue up strips of wood to make a cedar canoe.
So you're going to make the canoes yourself?
No, the strippers.
Or I'll rent space. Actually, probably what I'll do is I'll rent space in my shop. The guys will want to come make their own. And then I'll talk to them about environmental issues.
That works. As long as it's that 1,500 or however. So why are we talking about this? Why is green infrastructure beneficial? I just want to show a quote from the mayor to show that he's behind this in Mayor Memphis. So this was specifically what he was talking about, the 55 new miles of bike lanes that the city is currently in the middle of installing. And he feels that these facilities are critical to the livability and the health of our city. So he kind of gets this. And when I talk about the benefits of the network, I like to frame them in terms of economics because that's what gets people, no matter what your environmental beliefs are, you're always going to think about the money in your pocket. So we want to think about how these are beneficial to our region economically, and that's both directly and indirectly. I'll go really fast, John, sorry. This is directly, it increases property values. Several studies have shown a direct correlation between those. The latest one by the Trust for Public Land shows that an average 5% increase if a home or a property is within 500 feet of a park or a greenway, and that's a a safe estimate. I've seen articles upwards of 20%, so 5% is a safe estimate. property values. It develops high-dollar ecotourism, like bird watching and cycling. 87% of cycling tourists earn more than $50,000 per year, so they are going to be high-dollar spending tourists that we want in our city. They help to conserve our working lands, which can be major drivers of state and local economies, such as the timber industry in Mississippi that supports 8.5% of the state's workforce. So that's next. Okay. It also helps to offset city resource maintenance costs. So think of just one 50-year-old tree. You're able to save $75 per year in air conditioning from it, $75 per year in stormwater control, and $50 per year in pollution control from the preservation of a 50-year-old tree. So it's a cost-effective way to do that, to offset resource maintenance. And it enhances multimodal transportation. If you think about the percent of family income spent on transportation in an auto-dependent neighborhood, it can be upwards of 25%. Whereas in a transit-rich neighborhood, generally families spend about 9% of their income on transit. So it can be a huge relief on our family income. Indirectly, it helps to improve quality of life, as the mayor said. This is just a survey that I took of the America's favorite cities. And the first question here was on quality of life and visitor experience. And you see several of the subjects that we're talking about today: parks and outdoor access, people watching, peace and quiet, public transportation and pedestrian, environmental friendliness. So it's an important aspect of quality of life for recreation, for attracting new residents, and it's really important for advancing public health. So indirectly there is an effect that greenways will affect public health statistics that will help to favor companies when choosing to move to our area, and it's really important to have opportunities for exercise and recreation because obviously 1/5 of all of our healthcare spending in the U.S. is on obesity-related illness, so it's a major national issue. And if you provide an outlet for recreation and exercise, people are more likely to do it. Quickly, it helps to retain ecological stability for not just for their own intrinsic value, but also for hunting, fishing, wildlife watching industries. It helps to create social capital, fostering community interaction. It's really important, I think, for us here in Memphis. We're so in our little bubbles of our neighborhoods. It helps to bring these neighborhoods together and to create new networks. And it helps to establish a sense of place for a city. Those emotional bonds that their citizens have to their city, and that is perceived through physical beauty and opportunities for socializing, studies have shown. And cities that have higher emotional connections with their residents also correlate with higher GDP growth. So there is something to be said there between the connection. So are we making a difference in our region? There has been several economic impact studies done. A couple in particular are along Broad Avenue with the bike lanes that they have painted guerrilla style down their street a couple years ago. Several, I think it was 13 businesses have popped up on that street since that action. And then there's also right now a survey of Green Line property values that's happening. Now that it's been 2 full years since the Green Line was open, how have their property values changed in that time period? I'm also going to show you a couple of public perception studies that have been done among Green Line residents. When it first opened in fall 2010, we're going to look at a couple of recreation transportation rates. I talked about the Green Lane project, and then John's going to talk about our HUD regional planning grant that we have received for creating a great grant, which was highly competitive, as well as the Tiger grant that we received, which is super competitive for the multimodal corridor. So in terms of public assessment of benefits, this study was done, like I said, in fall of 2010 when the Green Line had only been open a couple months, but already people are responding that it will, over 70% say it will at least somewhat positively, if not very positively, affect neighborhood quality, and that it will actually help to connect communities. So a big benefit or a huge benefit, 70% say it will help to connect our communities. If we look at rates of bicycling and recreational walking, you can see that over 50% of people bicycle at least 1 to 2 times per week in Memphis, and or actually in the NPO. This is the NPO. And how often do you walk for recreation? Close to 75% of people per week for recreation. So the users are there. We need to provide the facilities to keep them out there on the trails and to grow their use of the trails. And I'm going to just touch briefly on our HUD regional planning grant that we received. It has to do with the creation of a regional green print, which is a green infrastructure network, a plan for that network. And that's going to identify our resources that will help to protect, restore, and maintain them, and help to protect, restore, and maintain them for the benefit of people and nature. And then the plan, once we have it, will guide the development of this network with all those components we talked about that will help to maximize the natural functions of the landscape and the benefits to our community. Okay. And if you want to know more about to access the map or to find out updates on what's happening around the region, you can find us on Facebook or Twitter at Mid-South Greenways or online at midsouthgreenways.org. And then we're having a big party to celebrate all of our partners and our accomplishments in this past year on December 7th, next week, Friday night, and you guys are all invited if you'd like to come. It's normally $25 at the door, but just tell them that you were here at UB 101 and you can come celebrate with us. There'll be wine and food and music, so it'll be fun. Okay? Hopefully it doesn't go too much time.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Sarah, was that holiday party, was that like on the website?
Yeah. It's going to be on Facebook. December 7th at the Community Foundation. Make a note.
I'm John Zena. I'm the program manager for the Mid-South Regional Green Grant Sustainability Plan, which is the plan that's being created by the Regional Planning Grant that Tara mentioned. Let's see. I'm going to talk about sort of the plan for the region as well as the overall regional planning grant program from sort of a federal perspective, because I think it's sort of interesting to think about the project that we're doing here regionally in the context of what the federal government is trying to do in terms of aligning the departments, some of the departments at the federal level to look at ways to use funds for projects that have interdependent connections. In November 2011, Shelby County government and really the Mid-South region was awarded a $2.62 million HUD regional planning grant to develop the Mid-South Regional Green Grant Sustainability Plan. The study area for the plan is the Memphis MPO and the West Memphis MPO. And in a couple of slides you can actually see the municipalities involved. But generally it's Shelby County and then Western Fayette County, Eastern Crittenden County, Arkansas, Northern DeSoto County. As Tara mentioned, it was a very competitive grant. Ours was one of 29 regions. It was awarded the grant in fiscal year 2011 out of 130 applicants. And one of the things that I think was really attractive about our grant for HUD was the coordination between groups that were already working on greenways, I think, made a big difference. Because as you'll see later in the presentation, one of the important things for the regional planning program is the development of a consortium of stakeholders from across the region to work on developing these plans. So having that foundation of the Greenway Steering Committee that started in 2009 and having those nonprofit organizations, municipalities already working together towards supporting each other and to bring more green infrastructure into the region, I think was a pretty competitive, attractive part of our grant application. So the first bullet, you'll sort of recognize a little bit from what Tara mentioned. So the Regional Green Grant Sustainability Plan seeks to establish a unified vision for a region-wide network of greenways, blueways, conservation lands, natural areas, But it's also intended to promote community health, alternative transportation, economic growth, environmental protection, and specifically connectivity and access across the region. Access and connectivity across municipal boundaries. Tara mentioned, there are different connections like between Germantown and Collierville, kind of working out those inter-jurisdictional connections. And what we'd like to see through this process is we've created a vision that gives a seamless network across the region, so that we're able to connect communities across the region to help not only for just the sake of connectivity across jurisdictional lines, but also to be able to move people in terms of thinking about other modes of transportation, and then also being able to help people access goods and services. The planning body for this process is the Mid-South Regional Green Grant Consortium, comprised of representatives from nonprofit organizations, municipalities and state government agencies, colleges and universities, citizens groups, businesses. At this time, we have about 49, I think today the count was 49 groups that officially signed on to be part of the consortium. Our goal is to have 50 to 70 in that range, so we're pretty close. But among those 49 groups, we have over 130 different representatives who've already come into the process and started to participate. We had our first consortium meeting in August, just to sort of get the process going. We start to ramp up into 2013 when we are really getting to the primary planning work. I think that we'll have an ideal group size for the consortium, and hopefully we'll be able to, at that point, just start adding on membership in terms of where we see different organizations and communities being represented, and figure out ways that even if they can't become full-time or full members into the process, how their participation gets included into the process. So again, here's the study area. So it includes all the municipalities in Shelby County. In Fayette County, there are 3 municipalities. All right, we've got Braden and Galloway and Piperton in Fayette County, and those may not be communities that are too familiar to you. Braden and Galloway are for the most part rural areas. Piperton is a growing area. In DeSoto County, Walls and I believe it's Horn Lake and South Haven, Olive Branch, and Fernando. And then in the Brighton County area, Marion, West Memphis, and then a small town called Sunset. So just to talk a little bit about the federal regional planning grant program. In 2009, the Housing and Urban Development, Department of Transportation, and the Environmental Protection Agency joined together to form the Partnership for Sustainable Communities to help communities nationwide improve access to affordable housing, transportation, while also, respecting environmental protection. And what these agencies found was, well, number one, it's 2009, so we've got, the beginning of an economic recession, so our budget's being slashed pretty significantly, so, that was one factor in terms of why these agencies came together to start thinking about how they could better leverage the funds that they did have. But the other thing is the agencies were looking at some of the projects that they were conducting on their own and finding that some of the activities that they were doing were actually running counter to activities that other agencies were doing. So the EPA may be funding a river cleanup, and then sometime after that, DOT or HUD does a project that ends up contributing sediment load into that river that was just cleaned up by the EPA. So, those sorts of projects conflicting with each other were something that, caught the attention of the leaders of the 3 departments, and they came together and sort of thought about, how they can create more grant programs that work together rather than in contrast to each other. The regional planning grant being one of many that are under that Partnership for Sustainable Communities. And we're actually pretty fortunate in the Memphis area to have a number of them. The Herian Bridge Project, that's part of the Main Bank Vector, that was funded by the Tiger Grant, that's an example. The Community Challenge Grant, which is what funds the Memphis Aerotropolis Plan that you may have heard about. That's another example of a grant under the Partnership for Sustainable Communities. So under the Regional Planning Grant, HUD requires grantees form the multi-jurisdictional, multi-sector partnership consortium. So this is a requirement from HUD that we have the consortium. And when we applied for the grant, there were probably about 25 partners who were already signed on and supported the grant through a memorandum of understanding or through a letter of support that gave in-kind donations. So we actually received the grant itself, the cash value of the grant is $2.62. We actually received I think $1.2 million in in-kind donations from organizations regionally on the front end to support the grant program. And at this point, like I said, that was about 25 organizations. We've got close to 50 now. Hopefully, we'll get closer to 70 by the time we really get into the process. So I think that the actual value of support from organizations and agencies and citizens from across the region will exceed that $1.2 million in-kind donation. So within the consortium, one of the things that HUD wanted to see was that you're not just kind of bringing together the typical planning partners that you always have at the table for planning activities. They wanted to see some more non-traditional partners, so they gave us examples of education organizations, arts and culture groups, recreation and environmental groups. That was kind of easy for us. Public health agencies, business community, social equity groups, which they define as traditionally underrepresented groups in planning efforts, as well as neighborhoods. So I'm happy to say that we have a number of these categories sort of represented already in our consortium. We have school districts, universities involved. Like I said, of course, the groups from the Regional Steering Committee are a big part of the consortium so far, as well as a number of public health officials who've joined on and nonprofit groups who focus on health issues. So just to sort of further the elements of the program, multi-jurisdictional planning, integration of housing, land use, economic, workforce development, transportation. And to that end, the goals that the regional planning grant sets forth is to consider those interdependent challenges of economic competitiveness, social equity, energy use and climate change, public health and environmental impact. So sort of thinking through that same model that the three agencies were thinking through when they formed the partnership. What are the interdependent challenges regionally across these issues and then across jurisdictions as well. So from those goals, the Federal Partnership for Sustainable Communities created these 6 livability principles to sort of guide each of the grantees. And the livability principles that are provided here, a number of them I've already sort of been over a couple of times. But this is through the green grant and through the green infrastructure network and vision that we create through this regional planning process. What we're striving to do is to activate these livability principles within our region by not only thinking about the connection between green spaces in terms of the ecological and natural benefits, but also touching on a lot of the areas that Tara mentioned that are part of the livability principles, like alternative transportation, connection to workforce, connection from neighborhoods to goods and services, particularly as we think about where you have areas within the region that may be considered food deserts, where people don't have as good of a connection to fresh foods and other goods and services, and thinking about how a network of greenways and open spaces sort of creates another mode of transportation within a multimodal link that can help make those connections, as well as improve the transportational links that we currently have. So thinking about how a network of green spaces would actually enhance the public transit network that we have by being able to find more efficient routing, be able to create opportunities for express routing and things like that. So just kind of touching back on what Tara mentioned in terms of the steering committee vision. Again, this is a lot of the foundation for the regional green grant application, and a number of these organizations were instrumental in helping us get the grant for the region, and I believe they're all part of the consortium. And then thinking about, as we start to develop our green grant and our network of green spaces, and thinking about the hubs and links and sites in terms of identifying our vision for what spaces we want to, or what lands we want to preserve, as well as what lands we want to convert to preserve land. So that includes forested areas, parks and greenways, waterways, agricultural areas, wetlands, that are existing, but also thinking about how what's our vision for doing reforestation in urban areas and other parts of the region. What's the vision in terms of restoring agricultural lands in areas that are traditionally rural and agricultural and want to, as their own communities sort of continue that tradition. And also thinking about different ways that we can include green spaces into the gray infrastructure. So thinking about things like green streets, where you've got vegetated swales that are included along streets, so that if you're moving people to places through sidewalks, through streets, through bike lanes, but you've also got vegetated areas that are performing ecological functions like mitigating stormwater, sequestering carbon dioxide, and things like that. So we start with the green infrastructure network, and by adding on some of these livability principles, we start seeing how the network considers housing and goods and services, schools, work as hubs and sites in their own right, and looking at alternative transportation as sort of links alongside an expanded network of greenways that helps enhance our connectivity throughout our region. So these are a lot of the different ways that we believe that our green print should activate those livability principles in our region, and this actually is a foundation for how we're sort of creating or how we're organizing to create the plan through the organizational structure here, and in particular the 8 working groups that are topic focused and that will conduct most of the work in the regional planning process. So the first tier is the executive committee. This will be 25 members who essentially make up the decision-making body of the consortium structure. The membership of this group will be 1/3 working group chairs, so that each of the working groups have representation on the executive committee. 1/3 major funders who committed in-kind support on the front end, and then also 1/3 social equity partners. So these are individuals and organizations who represent, as I said, traditionally underrepresented communities within the region, to make sure that their participation is included in a very critical way into this process. And then the sort of middle step here is a regional mayors roundtable. This is pretty much what it sounds like. What we want to do here is bring together each of the municipal mayors from around the region to sort of like a halfway point in our planning process to hear sort of the progress of the plan, hear sort of what the consortium of stakeholders have already put forward in terms of the vision for the region, but then also to give feedback into the process too. The important thing with this is number one, bringing together each of the regional mayors to talk to each other about this issue, so that we can demonstrate the importance of elected officials from across the region coming together and considering regional planning issues. So for our case, they'll be discussing the green print, but hopefully this will create a foundation for more discussion between regional mayors on regional planning issues going forward. And then the other thing too is, when we bring together these elected officials, we want to demonstrate the benefits and the values of having this green infrastructure network, and then the benefits and values of this plan that has been what we created by stakeholders from across the region. So once we get to the point of implementation, we have some support from elected officials across the region to adopt the plans, as well as to begin looking at how we can fund it, to start making these connections on the grant. Because this grant is only planning money. So what comes out of this will only be planning, so there won't actually be any green ones put in the ground as a result of this process.
So where that says what their major funders, what does that mean?
So as I talked about earlier on, there were a number of organizations who supported the grant program at the application stage with an in-kind donation. They basically wrote a letter committing, X number of dollars of staff time, essentially. So the 1/3 major funders are seats for those organizations who, committed in-kind support on the front.
Can you give some example?
Sure. The High Family Foundation is one of was the biggest in-kind funder for the project, as well as the City of Memphis, Shelby County. Let's see. MATA was a pretty major funder. Memphis BioArts was a major funder. MRDC, Wolford Conservancy. Actually, a lot of the organizations that are represented in the Greenway Steering Committee.
Who is the visioning consultant?
Sure. We are working to finalize the contract now, but we'll have a master planning consultant to help lead this process. It's a group that's going to be headed by LRK, as well, in conjunction with, and that's Lee Riggs Kiss, their local planning and design firm. But they're working in conjunction with a group called Alta Greenways, who have done a number of greenways planning projects across the country. They've done a similar project to this in the Birmingham, Jefferson County area, as well as they have one that they're working on now in the Northwest Arkansas area. And actually, in the Birmingham area, they worked to create the plan, and as a result of the plan they created there, Birmingham received a Tiger grant to implement a number of the greenways and trails that they had that they planned for in that master plan. And in fact, it's the Birmingham-Jefferson County area, but the number of jurisdictions that they had involved in that plan is very similar to ours. And I actually spoke with the executive director of the organization who led that process, and one of her comments was that that they had a region of jurisdictions who rarely work together on planning issues, and through this process they were able to easily just bring everyone to the table because this was an issue that the jurisdictions across the region were very interested in. I think we have the same situation here where you probably saw a number of the town and city seals on the list of groups that are on the Greenway Steering Committee, and a number of the municipalities that are in the region have already signed on to be part of the consortium. So I think that they'll be a good consultant to help continue to bring on that support from jurisdictions across the region. They also have a number of other partners: the Trust for Public Land, Placeways, a couple of local firms, Power Cell Design, and Trust Marketing.
So this is a consulting firm that we're looking for a vision consultant, and it's a firm, it's a person.
Right. It's actually a group of firms that will occupy that role.
And is it Steve Otterman that's kind of stuck with the job of herding these people?
Right. Steve has the job of herding everyone.
We gave him a Sierra Club
He's
cat
usually
herding.
have a place in the organizational chart. Yeah. Sorry. Steve did.
So as I mentioned, most of the work will be done by the 8 topic focused working groups, and the 8 working groups are, as I said, sort of the way that we are activating these livability principles into the project, and viewing those livability principles and considering how they're incorporated into the project was the basis for the working groups that were developed. Parks and Greenways being sort of the central piece of this, but we've talked about how community health, alternative transportation, connections to workforce, environmental protection, social equity, and housing are all very important components of this. And each working group will be staffed by a local nonprofit organization from the consortium. Actually, 2 of them are in the room tonight. The MRDC is actually staffing the data mapping and evaluation group, and the Mid-South Greenways is staffing the Parks and Greenways. So we have some really good local representation and experts on the staffing each of those groups. So the major activities have really gone over the Green Print Vision Plan the most. That's sort of the phase 1 of the project, and that's the biggest part of the project as well. There are a few other contracts that are involved, and particularly in ways that are supportive of the phase 1 process. The GIS and data collection consultant will help us bring data that we need in order to conduct the analyses, for particularly help the working groups conduct analyses that they need to be able to develop recommendations and priorities to suggest to the full consortium and to the master planning consultant to develop the vision plan. And one of the things that they're actually doing is to create an online mapping portal, a web mapping portal, so that consortium members will be able to just kind of log in and call up different data layers to be able to support their work with the working group. The other interesting thing about that too is, each of the consortium members will have access to this data. So, this will be a platform that they can use in their own work as well, as they think about, how they can incorporate, data analysis analysis in projects that are separate from the green grant. The capacity building and community engagement consultant, they're going to help particularly, bring people into the process through, helping get people to the consortium, into the membership, into the working groups. We'll have 4 major public meetings, bringing them to those meetings as well. But also, there are going to be a lot of organizations and communities that we may not be able to reach through, the consortium, or which will require, a monthly commitment of time, or through, 4 public meetings that will move across the region, and many people just won't be able to make one of them for whatever reason. So what we'd like to do through this contract is think about how can we do more targeted, smaller outreach to organizations and communities across the region, so that we're able to bring in a broader scope of participation. And then the other thing too is, we want to be able to equip stakeholders and community residents with skills and knowledge on participating in planning processes, how sort of planning processes work, and what are the best ways to get to have your voice heard in planning processes, so that it's not only an exercise for bringing in more participation in our process, but it has a lasting impact, and people are sort of more equipped to engage in to planning processes going forward. The next thing is in the later stage of the project, we're doing a campaign to promote the use of the facilities that we're planning for: greenways, bike lanes, parks, things like that. The bus transit to workplace study looks at how currently using bus transportation to access major employment centers in the region. I think about how we can make those routes more efficient to connect to those workplaces, but also how we connect those routes to a network of greenways, so that there's a more efficient multimodal network there. And the Greenways Health Impact Study, we'll look at how greenways are impacting health on a localized level, a community level. So in terms of kind of an assessment tool to look at if we put a greenway in a particular neighborhood, what are the impacts to community health? Also, how can we sort of set the parameters for measuring that impact going forward once the grant program is expired? The Fair Housing and Equity Assessment is a requirement of HUD, and particularly it asks us to look at concentrations of poverty and high opportunity areas, so areas where there are a lot of jobs, a lot of goods and services, a lot of public investment. Where there's a disconnect between those two things, and how we can incorporate that knowledge into our planning process to make better connections. And then finally, the phase 2, which will start around September of next year, is a sub-planning phase as an incentive for participation in the green grant planning process. Organizations will be eligible to apply for funds from a pool of $800,000 to do planning that's localized, so neighborhood level planning, or more topic-focused planning that may cover the region, so that we're able to create from this more smaller plans, so that when the implementation dollars come down, whether it's from local or state or federal governments or from foundations, there are already plans in place to be able to serve as applications and demonstrate that planning and design, engineering, in some cases, has been done to support green absolutely. And that's sort of going back to, as we think about how the green infrastructure network sort of includes things like green streets. I think community gardens is another example. Thinking about, that issue of access to fresh food, as well as sort of the environmental impact of, gardening, and having community gardens, urban gardens. The sub-planning phase will advance the Green Brick Vision Plan that's created. But in that vision plan, I think what we'd like to see is for elements like urban gardening to be included in the vision, whether through actually something that's spatial oriented or policy oriented, in terms of thinking about how we reclaim vacant property and use it for more productive purposes. So this is the general timeline of our major activities. As you can see, we've got a good bit that's starting in, now, with the Green Vision Plan, the supporting activities, and then those small activities, the bus transit and the health impact study, will likely start in the beginning of the new year. And then the sub-planning activities will start in September 2013. The end of the grant project is January 2015, so we have a little over a year for that sub-planning phase to take place. So just as another summary of major activities, I've included here a number of the items I've already talked about, the visioning being a major piece, but also thinking about what are some of the smaller planning activities that could be conducted as a part of this process, particularly in the sub-planning phase, things like environmental planning related to stormwater management. So thinking about how we can use vacant land throughout the region, reclaim that land and use it for more productive uses like stormwater mitigation or carbon sequestration, examples like that. And then also thinking about implementation strategies and feasibility of implementation for the plan as a potential sub-planning activity that could come from this. So just in conclusion, the regional impact that we're seeking from this is, number one, to assemble a consortium that creates a foundation, that not only to produce this plan, but creates a foundation for planning efforts going forward in the future. Creating that green infrastructure network to promote activity, economic competitiveness, environmental protection, connectivity and access to all. Developing plans and strategies that encourage investment and allow us to become more economically competitive and improve our quality of life in the region. And then also bringing together elected officials to engage in the effort to demonstrate the importance of working together as a region and considering those interdependent issues that impact jurisdictions across the region and don't really stop at jurisdictional lines. So if you want more information, there's my contact information. Or if you're interested in being part of the consortium, we certainly would welcome that too. Please just contact me and I'll let you know that's really how that process works.
Yay. Thank you. I've had the pleasure of hearing you do this whole spiel basically, I think twice last month.
You still showed up tonight.
And
I'm impressed.
I'm trying to show up every time I can. I'm sorry for my 2 absences.
Any other questions for either of them? We have another half hour, so. Huh?
Taking too long.
No, you were doing great.
I'm stoked because I had a conference call at 7 and I was afraid I was going to be really rude and walk
That creaky door.
Do y'all have any questions about other greenways that she didn't cover? Because there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, I know. You can be here all night talking
I have just one. What is your title of your job? Just what do you get that the city have? Your title, John?
I'm the program manager of this land grant, so that's just 100% of my time. So,
Program manager of
Mid-South Regional Green Green Sustainability.
the group.
He was hired on for this particular grant for this period of time.
And it's administered through the Office of Sustainability.
So what exactly is involved in the like marketing of like promoting the, I can't remember how you put it, the whole thing about getting people to use green spaces?
Well, that's sort of a step later into the process about how we actually go about doing the marketing for that. But the goal of that campaign is to think about how we're actually building that use. And in particular in the social equity communities such as low-income or minority or rural communities in the region. So in terms of focusing on communicating the benefits of using greenways, using bike lanes, and parks and other recreational facilities as well. But as for like the specifics to the marketing plan, that's something that we'll determine later in the process as we need to know.
One of the biggest challenges is getting some of the minority communities just involved to start with, because they're historically not involved in planning exercises to start with, and not very involved in the green movement. So that'll be a challenge. I look forward to seeing how we tackle that.
Gardens, urban gardens, community gardens.
Yeah. And it'll be through the churches and
Right.
just getting people to show up to planning meetings, because people feel we've been planning for years and what do we get, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting because
Show up to the park.
And again, the capacity building community engagement consultant, one of the biggest things that they're going to do is really to focus on those communities that we want involved and sort of target them on a smaller, one-on-one level, so that we're making sure that we have their involvement, but also we're taking the process to them as well. So whether it's working through the churches or neighborhood associations, bringing the process to them rather than just relying on, hopefully we can get a whole lot of people to these public meetings that, maybe we don't know if we're going to get the attendance that we want as it relates to involving communities who traditionally have not been, very well involved in our life.
Well, that are challenged with transportation.
Exactly.
Challenged
Yes.
with, frankly, the money to be able to, go and participate. But it's not a whole lot of money does when you go to a meeting, but you're taking
And the
part of a
time,
day off of work, and have to figure out, like, how you're going to get us across town, or that makes it hard.
That is something that's included in the consortium. There's actually, Tara mentioned, part of the budget includes stipends for low-income individuals to be part of the consortium. So as they take if they're taking time out of their work schedule, to be a part of this project, they're being reimbursed through the stipend, so that they're not losing pay from this work.
you should apply for one of those.
For a stipend?
Yeah.
I can run.
It's a great idea, but it's not exactly where.
Yeah, we're going to work that out. Those sorts of things are interesting when it involves, the county government.
Do you have anyone in the consortium that, like, is part of Ken Reardon's team at all, that has access to his databases of people that they've reached out to for all their projects? I mean, you have Curtis, but...
Yeah, And Charlie Santo, and actually, we kind of reached out to, some of the folks related to the Vance Avenue Collaborative, but who were more university related. Like I think that there's a student who's kind of maybe spearheading some of that.
Yeah, Rachel.
Yes, that's right. So she and Charlie Santo were part of it, but we're kind of hoping to broaden that connection there with what they've already been able to achieve with the Vance Avenue.
How many neighborhoods are involved in this that you need to get? These neighborhoods that are difficult, or very challenging, low income, or not quite used to getting in the planning process. You mentioned the dance group. How many are there?
I'm not sure. I mean, we're
Hundreds.
Are they all like the city and county?
Yeah.
Is it everything? Does it include everything?
You're asking like people that are already involved in the process, or?
No, I'm just
Just
wondering,
starting.
I went to meeting with HUD qualifications to qualify for the all their guidelines and everything else that you pointed out here, then you've really got to have that support and that you've got to have that.
Well, and we know from data that they've provided where, the low to moderate income census tracts are within our region. So, for the most part, like the city of Memphis, the city of West Memphis also includes some pretty low income areas as well. But in terms of actual numbers of neighborhoods, I'm not exactly sure. But spatially, we have an idea of where those areas are.
We don't have to get buy-in and support from every single inner city community. What you're trying to do is show that what the plan that you're putting into place has taken into consideration all different types of uses, including various different areas. So it's not like
At the last meeting, there was several people from South Memphis neighborhoods, North Memphis neighborhoods,
So it's just getting that input throughout the county.
Absolutely.
and beyond the county, it's regional.
Right.
It's all regional.
Yeah, there was folks in West Memphis there, that are dealing with a lot of the same issues that we deal with in inner city Memphis, but bringing in particular West Memphis flavor.
And how much was this grant again?
2.6 million.
It just doesn't seem like a lot of money.
It doesn't.
It's just a city.
Well, but there's a match to that as well. Is it a 1-to-1 match, or how much should we match for that?
The match is about 1.2 committed. But I really think it was overwhelming with that, because that was from the 25 organizations who, supported the application in front of them. Since then, we've brought in a number of other organizations. And there have been individuals who have become involved who weren't initially part of, the team, I guess. From the city of Memphis, for example, we have more than 5 employees who were part of the in-kind match. We would probably have closer to 20 now.
About how many, being a regional, about how many, let's say, communities, how many different types of city councils, aldermen, mayors,
Well, there are 18 municipalities
in this
in
plan?
the region, and then there's the Shelby County government and Fayette County and Southern County. Crittenden County doesn't have a county government. It's just the municipalities. However, right now, not all of the municipalities have, pledge participation or been involved yet. All of them from Shelby County, yes, but only one from Fayette County, a couple from DeSoto County, one from Crittenden County. So we still have a ways to go in terms of kind of bringing them all on.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Eric.
And then on top of that, there are organizations like the Memphis Shelby, Fayette, and DeSoto, and then the West Memphis APO, which handles those issues for the Arkansas side as well. So it approaches 25 to 30 different, boards and commissions.
I would love to say that, for example, the mayor of Marion has the same needs as the mayor of Holly Springs. It's a difficult melting pot.
It was difficult, the 6 guiding principles, it was difficult getting everyone to agree. Like, that's a bare minimum threshold by the government to say, you need to believe in these things. And that's pretty tough when you're dealing with a region. They seem obvious to some of us that you would want to do that, but when you start talking about sustainability, that, sometimes you get certain people hear that word and...
Well, I think also, greenways and open spaces, generally, but also in the context of this grant, will mean different things to different communities. There will be different communities who, their focus may not be on an alternative transportation route for their citizens. That may not be a concern for them at all. But they may be very interested in having, more greenways for their residents to use for recreation and exercise, for environmental and ecological preservation, things like that. And then there are other communities who may think that this is a great idea, to start thinking about using these routes as transportation in conjunction with existing transportation systems. So hopefully the sell for those differing communities is there's sort of something for everyone that can be perceived as a benefit.
What's the best way for people to provide input on recreational uses for the parks, like Shelby Farms and Evergreen Park, for example? Let's say I don't have time to serve on 5 million different boards and go to all these different meetings, but I love going to both of those parks and I go regularly, and I think there's a lot of other cool things that we can do with those parks that I'd like to see as a regular active user of them. How do I provide that?
I would form relationships with some of the people that work at those parks. I don't know if you know Matt Farr.
Yeah, my son did this.
Contact Matt Farr. He'll be willing to listen to you about things about Shelby Farms.
Yeah. Okay. What about Overton Park?
Tina Sullivan. She's great. She's very accessible, and I can get you contact information for her if you'd like to talk to her. She's very accessible. She's the executive director of the Conservancy, and they're definitely open to comments. Their website may even actually have comment sections on it because they did surveys when the Conservancy was first being formed for ideas on what to do out there.
Yeah, and Shelby Farms, for example, has a master plan similar to what we're doing with this, and they have several public, meetings.
Yeah. One of the things that I think about Overton Park, especially that kind of frustrates me, is I think there's a lot of maybe not very formal kinds of small community groups that make use of the park a lot, which I think is totally great because it's public space and everybody should be able to use it. But there's a lot of things that they charge for, which I understand that they need to be economically viable, but I also kind of think it's a bummer that sometimes there's that barrier to entry for people to use public facilities that is a little frustrating.
You're talking about their
Yeah.
I think that's
Well, there's the pavilion, the shell, just lots of different areas that there are fees to use that,
even Bartlett Parks and Recreation is something I feel like probably a source of
spaces, especially like Overton Park. There's plenty of low-income areas, communities surrounding Overton Park that.
They have dozens of free shows at the show every year.
Right. Well, yeah, free shows, but that's like something that somebody else is organizing that you can come to. I'm saying if there are community organizations that want to be able to do their own things in these facilities, that those rental fees, I think, could be a big barrier to people.
I would think they'd be willing to work with nonprofits.
Yeah.
With nonprofits, I
Right,
would
but
think
that's
they'd
the
be
thing, you
willing.
have to be a nonprofit. So what if
But
you're
there's a lot of nonprofits you could partner with to do things like that.
Sure.
You just gotta go around it the right way.
Right.
Find out who's connected to
It
who.
has to be like, everything has to be so organized and official where there's
Well, I mean, they spent
people, just
hundreds of-
regular